Today we're going to talk about Piaget and Vygotsky, two of the theorists mentioned in chapter 4. And Piaget is probably one of the more famous theorists in early childhood. Piaget's pre-operational stage, if you remember, we talked about sensory motor stage in the infant and toddler stage. And Piaget's pre-operational stage is 2 to 7, ages 2 to 7. And there are a lot of things that make up this stage. We'll talk about a few of the ideas and theories that he came up with. But he believes that children at this age use symbols to represent words, images, and ideas. He believes that there is a logical manipulation of information. And the reason why is because children aged 2 to 7 don't have a lot of information to draw on. They only have their experiences or what they're told, and they don't have a lot of the experience that you might have now in your ages that you are right now. So children at that age are taking in knowledge all the time and trying to logically fit it within their schemas. Remember, we talked about schemas before. Those are their little file folders that they're continually filling. So there's two substages to this. Age 2 to 4 is when they're able to mentally represent an object that is not present, and they rely on perception in problem solving. Then they start to get older, 4 to 7, and they're able to intuitively believe things or think about things. So it's still immature reasoning to understand the world, but it's moving towards that concrete operational stage. So some of the elements of pre-operational thought is pretend play. So during the time of pretend play, they're taking everything they're learning about the world, and they are incorporating it into their play. And so play is so detrimental and integral to their learning at this age. Egocentrism is a belief that other people have the same thoughts or perceptions that they do. So they're not able to take the perception of somebody else. There are a lot of theorists right now that are trying to kind of challenge this theory of Piaget's about egocentrism. That if you are interested in it, Alison Gopnik is looking at egocentrism with young children and doing a lot of work around that. And it's fascinating to see how children can actually start taking perspective of others around 18 months. So centration is focusing on only one characteristic of an object to the exclusion of others. So they start making classification errors. And I'm going to show you a video after this about classification errors and conservation when they take, and they show it in the book. There's we'll look at it in a minute, conservation, but it is looking at something and only taking the characteristic, one part of the characteristic. So one example in the book are buttons. They're white buttons and then black buttons. And they ask the child, there's 4 black buttons, 3 white buttons, and it's, how many black buttons are there? There are 4. How many white buttons? There are 3. Are there more black buttons or are there more buttons? And they can't take both the color and the quantity, the overall arching, it's a button, into their mind at the same time. So they exclude that. They only take, so they'll always say the black buttons. There's more black buttons than buttons. Animism is attributing like qualities to objects. So you could probably picture a child or yourself when you were 4 and you had stuffed animals and they had names, and you gave them, oh, she's tired, she wants to go to sleep, she's hungry, she wants to eat. That is considered animism. And then transductive reasoning is inferring connections between unrelated situations. So the book talks about Piaget. I remember I told you in the last video, one of the critiques of Piaget is that he used only his own children. He didn't do experiments on a large group of children. But his daughter would say, it's not afternoon because I haven't taken my nap yet. So there's two, afternoon and nap are not the same thing, but because um, nap happened during afternoon, she created the connection between the two. So we talked about conservation a little bit already, and again, check out the next video on concentration or conservation because it's so interesting. You can also do the experiments if you have anyone in your own life that is a child, age 2, 3, 4, 5. Do the conservation experiment with them. Now, Lev Vygotsky, was a Russian theorist. He died when he was 38 from tuberculosis, and he had quite a few theories, and we probably would have gotten so many more if he had lived longer. But he believes that cognitive development was really a product of our cultural upbringing and our social interaction with adults and other peers. So he came up with the zone of proximal development, or the ZPD, and that is considered a task a child can't do independently but can do with support. So think about a child learning how to ride their bike. They're not able to ride their bike on their own unless they get some help generally. So scaffolding would be temporary support to get given to do a task. So picture a child doing a puzzle, they're getting frustrated. An adult might point out something about the edges, or do you see how this is a side piece because it has a flat line? That's a little bit of support, and then the child can do the puzzle on their own. So you gradually decrease the support as the skills improve. So going back to thinking about a bike, a child riding a bike, an adult pushing you, they've got more hands on the bike at the beginning, and then gently they're able to take their hand off of the bike and just maybe at the beginning start. So he believed that teachers should teach with child's zone of proximal development. This is in direct opposition of Piaget because Piaget believed that children should discover concepts on their own and create their own meaning. Remember, he's a constructivist. Vygotsky also believed that children talk to themselves. They have private inner speech, and we do this, as it says, children do this, but they talk out loud at first, and then they're able to turn it into their head. We do this as well, especially if we're alone. We might say it out loud, what we're doing, or if we're mad about something, or we're working through something, we might talk it out loud. But generally, if we're with other people, we would have that in our head, a private inner speech. And Piaget believed this was egocentric behavior. And that's it.